as you can see, I am still in France and enjoying the nice sunshine. And yeah, just chilling, reading some more Seven Deadly Chestins. And yeah, I kind of wanted to continue where we left off yesterday, actually, on this topic of thinking. And if you guys remember, we basically spoke about kind of this balance between intuition and calculation, and also this idea of kind of these mistakes when thinking about a previous idea and then implementing it in your game, and then it turns out that that idea isn't, actually applicable to the position, and you end up making a bad move because of um, this line of reasoning, right? This line of thinking. And okay, this chapter's all about thinking, right? So, uh, yeah, that's such an interesting kind of topic that gets delved into next, and I kind of wanted to share that with you because, I mean, if I am able to explain this to you guys in a way that makes sense, then that means it makes sense to me. So that's this kind of like principle, right? Like if you can teach something, that means you understand it well. So this is going to be my attempt to try and teach you what on earth is Rowson getting at, or at least what I feel like I'm getting at, because I actually think like you'll see that I actually disagree with Rowson's conclusion about this one topic, and I want to share what my conclusion would be, if that makes sense. So let's have a look at what this is. So basically after yesterday's stream, he goes on to talk about this position here. So this is actually White's turn to move, and yeah, I'll let you take some time to take in the position. I believe the material is equal, and there's definitely somewhat imbalanced, right? White's got a bishop, black's got a knight. And yeah, basically in this position, Rowson intuitively wanted to play the move Queen G7, but instead opted for Queen E6. Now, the exact moves I'm going to get into in a sec, but I should let you know that this Queen G7 move is the correct move, and Queen E6 is like heading in the wrong direction, and the game resulted in a draw. So let me explain what's going on here. So also welcome Labib to the stream. It's a cool build. I like how you pin the pieces on the board like a thumbtack. Yeah, no, it's cool. It's like I don't know where I got it from. I mean, basically I found it at home, so it must have been like a gift from like some member of the chess club a long time ago. But yeah, it's really nice. So let me explain this position. So okay, let me try and do this without shaking the board too much. Not so easy on a sunbed. But yeah, so basically in this position, in the magazine, the opponent says that, well, let me read it out exactly. So this was a game against Neil MacDonald, some grandmaster, and Neil writes, Jonathan felt instinctively that Queen G7 was the correct move, but decided to test his intuition with some analysis, and his head came up with the move Queen E6, right? So intuitively, Queen G7 was the move that he wanted to play, didn't fancy it. After calculating, went for Queen E6, right? So in this position, let's actually see how the game would have gone had White played Queen G7. So after the move Queen G7, what Rowson was looking at was if Black were to take on G7, which is apparently not the best move, but this was what was going through his mind. After Rook takes G7, Knight takes F5, which looks like a wild move. After Knight takes F5, White was worried about this sequence, right? If the pawn can't take, right? The pawn can't take. If the pawn takes, then you've got Rook H8 check. The king would need to block on G2, and then you lose the rook. So you're losing an exchange, right? So you can't take. So in this position, you have to play Rook takes D7. So this is very forced. And after Rook takes D7, now Black throws in Rook H8 check. And in this position, after King G2, there's the move Knight H4 check, King G3. And here, Black plays King takes D7. And what Rowson wrote in this position was that the position was unclear, because in this position, um, he was worried about how the move Rook H1, which looks like a game winner kind of move, right, to win this knight, can be met with the very shocking knight F5 check, right? So this is where basically Rowson reached in his calculation and determined that the position was not good for white. But what he realizes that after, in the post-game analysis or whenever he analyzed the position, that this position is just simply completely winning for white because white's just got bishop takes d5. And this is just a completely winning position, right? White's just a pawn up, has a bishop in an open position, and had Rowson seen the bishop takes d5, he probably would have gone for it. But in his head, if we go from the starting position, let me go all the way back. Basically, in the starting position, this pawn on d5 is defended by literally every single piece of blacks, and therefore it's like visualization-wise, you're not even looking at this bishop takes d5 move because the whole the pawn is defended so well. It's like so difficult to believe that you can ever take it, right? So in this position, as you can see, the queen, the knight, and both rooks are all defending d5. So you forget to consider this move bishop takes d5 at the end. And what basically Rowson goes on to explain in this kind of position and situation, he says that this decision of playing of not playing queen g7 and playing queen e6, he quotes MacDonald, and MacDonald says, every chess player, weak or strong, has to decide whether, as a rule, he should trust his intuition when it disagrees with his calculation. And that's wild to me, right? Because as a player, I always have this. I thought this is just the way to go. Like you basically have intuition to help you find like your top candidate moves, and you might feel a move is right. But if your calculation disagrees with the move, you can't play the move. Because if you play the move and you've just calculated something where you see that it's not working, and how on earth can you play it? But I guess the point is that if a strong player can really believe in their intuition, like above their calculation, they can just be like, well, probably I've missed something. I'll just play it anyway, and then it might work out. And that's wild to me. Like, yeah, I feel like I'm generally not playing a move, even if it's my first intuition, when I calculate like some reason not to play. Like for instance, this position, right? Like he basically calculated that final position was unclear. I would also do the same as him, where I would be like, even if queen g7 was my first intuition, I probably wouldn't go for it. But here, this is an example where actually he could have gone for it, and he would have found bishop takes d5 at the end. But I don't know how you can make this cool when you've just calculated a line that loses, right? But this is really interesting, right? Okay, let me tab this page. Rowson says, okay, let me yeah, okay, let me try this. So what Rowson says, let me do it like this, is basically he describes the kind of like intuitive thinking here as kind of fuzzy thinking. And what he means by this is like in chess, like at least for him, like when you think, it's not as methodical as all these books make out to be. It's a lot more fuzzy. And he basically just concludes that like this fuzzy thinking isn't a bad thing, and actually if you have more faith in your intuition, you don't have to make as much use of your calculation, and you can basically play the best move based on your fuzzy thinking. And to me, I completely disagree, because I feel like in this case, like the intuition worked out. And okay, if you're a really strong player and that subconscious is working super well to the point where you're able to find that best move despite not being able to justify it, then maybe it can work for you, right? But for me, I feel like, intuition needs to be used to find that first move, but then you need to be able to justify it to see if, does it actually work or does it not work? And I feel like that calculation is what you need to use to find out if it actually works. Now, one other really interesting point about this move, this queen g7 or not, was that Basically what Rowson goes on to say was, if you remember in that line that we just looked at, right at the end, like white played this like move rook h1 to pin the knight to the enemy rook, and then there was that like problem of knight takes f5, and because what Rowson says, he said he found a convenient line that allowed me to cease my search. And I think this, like this I've highlighted here, right? This is super important, right? Because what Rowson is saying is that basically this line, yeah, he stopped thinking. Wait. I'm losing my track of thought, but this is like really important to get clear. So, yeah, so he found a convenient line that allowed me to cease my search, right? So basically, he was looking for a reason to say why this line of calculation was wrong, right? He basically had decided in this position that he didn't want to lose control of the position. And this is what he said in his thoughts. He didn't want to lose control, so he didn't want to play anything that would be risky. And basically, this queen g7 line with this knight takes f5 sacrifice felt risky to him, and he was scared. And therefore, he was trying to find a good reason why not to play this line. He was trying to find a reason, and that's why he was able to see, once he saw this knight takes f5 check idea, like right at the end after rook h1, he was like, okay, I don't want to enter this, right? But yeah, I feel like what he needed to do was he needed to calculate without prejudice. This is the title of this video, right? Well, I've written it. Like, he needs to calculate without any preconceived thoughts about the position and just be as objective as possible when calculating, which of course is a very hard thing to do. But so for instance, I've written up here, I don't want to lose control. That's his current mindset. And when he starts calculating, he ended up going, this line has some scary moves, therefore I will avoid this, right? Rather than the mindset of, this line has some ghosts, but they're actually all fine, and this is the best move. And also, if he was trying to calculate without this feeling of like trying to, find out, is there some convenient line for him to stop calculating, then yeah, he would probably be able to find his bishop takes d5, because in that final position, if he can visualize it clearly and he's not got some kind of preconceived motive to try and end this calculation in a certain way, then he can just be like, well, what's going on in that final position? Aha, I've got this move, bishop takes d5, which is winning for me, right? So what my conclusion to this is not that you should trust your intuition over your calculation, because your calculation can, sometimes misguide you or not be accurate enough. I don't think that's the case for me. I feel like for me, the conclusion of this is that, sure, you can use your intuition to find this queen g7 and have hedge your bets that, yeah, this is probably the right move. But in order to play the move, I still think calculation is the correct way. But you need to try and calculate as objectively as possible and try to avoid any preconceived thoughts. For instance, in this case, Rowson's fear of losing control, that may cloud that calculation process, right? So I think, like, yeah, this is really, really the key. And maybe, like, this is something like I've understood already, but I think putting it into words then makes it like, makes it something that I can probably try and work towards more. Like, if, let's say, in a game, I'm trying to calculate a line, and I'm like, oh, let's say I'm a pawn up, like I want to keep control, like I don't, this line, he's got like a knight sacrifice, I don't really like this. I can be like, wait. Let's actually just calculate it for what it is, not allow these like thoughts that interfere with like the evaluation of that final position, because it's simply not useful, right? It may even cloud the calculation and stop you from finding like this bishop takes d5. So yeah, that was a long ramble. The sun is so bright I can barely read the chat. There, I have a pocket board. Okay, people talking about the board. Love the style of streams. Sweet. I'm glad you like it, Nocturnal Cuba. YouTube compression just implodes when you zoom in on small text. Oh dear. Sweet. So yeah, basically, yeah, no, I think my phone like died. I think. Anyway, the stream stopped, right? So basically, I have no idea where I got to, but I think I was concluding that point pretty nicely already. So yeah, the point being that I think I would still not be able to play a move that was my intuitive, like best move, if I calculated a line that wasn't able to justify it. But I think like yeah, the actual justification and calculation can definitely be improved by not allowing preconceived thoughts about where you want the position to go or what outcome you want. And then yeah, you'll be able to just calculate cleaner. So that was that was the conclusion. I don't know. Oh, God, I should just stop streaming on my phone because it's actually difficult. But yeah, that was one final nice. Oh God, see, I can't even see the screen. That was one really interesting point that I read in the next chapter. So I've been reading on and basically reading onto this concept of blinking. And basically, in simple terms, what Rowson is talking about with blinking is that it's when you miss the critical position, basically. And to define what a critical position is, at least, I mean, he says it's difficult to define, but what I'd consider it is like basically a position where there's like a very high chance of a turning point, and maybe both players miss it, or maybe one player finds it and the other person misses it, or maybe you find it and you make use of the critical position, right? But it's kind of like that position where there's a high chance of like some transformation of the position or a high chance of some turning point in evaluation, and you need to be very, very careful with how you tread in these positions. And what Rowson was saying, I don't even know if I'm live right now. I think I am. But yeah, basically what Rowson says is he basically discusses this concept of evaluation, and you know how we evaluate, or like how, at least how I evaluate, is like, you know, at the end of a line in my head that I calculate, or maybe even the current position on the board, I'll be thinking like you know, I'll be weighing up the factors, I'll be like looking at that position by itself and deciding, you know, who's better, right? Like based on all those factors. But what Rowson is suggesting is like, is there any kind of like advantage of evaluating by actually taking into consideration the moves that led to the position that is on the board, or the moves that lead to the final position in your calculation? And it got me really thinking, because like it's so hard to explain in words. It's like I feel like when you evaluate that final position, either from a calculation in your head or the present position on the board, that position that you evaluate in isolation, that is almost like the present moment, right? That's the present moment, and that is what really matters, because that present moment will define the future, and the future. Yo guys, what's up? I went back to my hotel room because I literally couldn't see the screen, and I didn't even know if I was still streaming or not, and I was just rambling in public, and I was just like, nah, let's screw this. So can someone very kind, who happens to be watching the stream still, can someone kindly tell me, like, at what points did I cut off? Like where to restart, really? Because I actually don't know. It says I've been live for 19 minutes, but I have no idea when when the stream cut off or not. I mean, at this point, I could try like refilm the whole thing. I don't know. But it's such a tricky like topic to put into words. That's almost like I don't want to have to refilm it, because like, you know, I understand what's going on, I think. I mean, I've explained it once, right? Even if it didn't get caught on stream. But yeah, maybe let me just because I think that's a really interesting link to like how you can always live your life better based on the conclusion from this blinking, right? So I want to definitely get to that. I don't think I got to that in the stream. So let me talk about this blinking chapter. I mean, I spoke about it just now a tiny bit, but yeah, I really wanted to discuss this one point that Rowson was making. Right, this is the thing. So yeah, sorry if this is like repeating again, because I mean, yeah, I didn't know what exactly got said, right? But basically, what Rowson started to discuss was this concept of how we evaluate a position in our head. And to keep things simple, let's just consider, a position on the board that we're trying to evaluate. We're trying to understand, is this a good position and for what reasons, do a proper evaluation, right? And basically, the question is, should there be any consideration of the moves that lead up to that position that we're evaluating? Like, is that a factor? And for what I understand is that it doesn't objectively have any impact on that current position, right? Like, the moves could basically be anything you want it to be, and that final position is the final position. That's what that final position is, and that's the position that is ultimately going to affect the future of the game based on that position. Like the previous moves, it doesn't matter. It's got to that same point, right? And what I was trying to make was like a game between computers. It's definitely best that a computer evaluates that position at point blank value, because that evaluation of that position alone, without considering the previous moves, will give you the best chance of making the best decisions moving forward, right? But in reality, when it's two humans playing, you have the previous moves do affect how you feel about that current position. Let's say one player was in a much worse position, and suddenly they've brought the position back to equal. Maybe that evaluation of the current position is not going to be, this position is equal, therefore we play for the draw. Maybe it's even something like, oh, we've got momentum and we can even push for the win because the opponent is tilting and the position is a mess. And maybe it's going to go from a loss to a draw to a win very, very quick, right? So where the moves come from then does impact how the game might quite possibly proceed, even if the position is exactly the same as another position where, let's say, it's been like a stone cold draw the whole game and you've reached this position, and the feeling is that it's still going to be a draw because the game has been a draw, and therefore, the game is going to most likely go in a different direction. To say if we reach that position from a point where one side was losing, one side was winning, and we get to that position. Does that make sense? So the moves that lead to that position that we're trying to evaluate does matter when we're dealing with humans, I think. And I think it's interesting because to make objectively the best move in that position, you want to try, at least when you're calculating, you want to try and not be clouded with any information if you want to make objectively the best move. Like maybe if you want to make the best practical move, then you should consider these factors. Like let's say the opponent's tilting, maybe you want to play a move that provokes him to tilt more. Maybe that's the best practical decision. But to make objectively the best move, you want to avoid these thoughts and just look at it point blank. And where I'm kind of like linking this to life, at least for me, is like I think it's exactly the same. Like this very point in time, you're sitting here watching the stream and you're living your life. You've got X amount of money in the bank. You've got X amount of knowledge about the world. You've got X amount of this, X amount of that at this current point in time.
that knowledge, you can evaluate your point right now, and you can evaluate what is the best way to proceed in your life. But of course, we don't do that. We take into consideration the previous seconds, minutes, hours, days, years, right, of our life, and are using all of this experience to basically guide us in the way that, is right. But that knowledge of the past, in fact, clouds our objective evaluation of how we should actually proceed in the way that's best for us. Like, it's probably good from a human point to use that past to kind of help push us in one way or another. But if we are quite emotional beings, it can actually push us in a way that might not actually benefit us for the best. So I feel like you should do both, right? Like, in day-to-day life, I think using your past experiences to help guide you is the most natural kind of flow of life. But if you actually need to find out, what the hell am I doing with my life? What am I going to do next? What is my future? Then you need to cut out the past 100% and look specifically at the current position, your present state, and find out what is the evaluation. Do you have doubled pawns? Do you have isolated pawns? Do you have an initiative? Do you, like, evaluate your current position and use that to basically guide you in the correct path, in the best path. Because I think, like, life is very similar to chess in the sense where basically chess has a start, the starting position. And same with life, right? All of us have the same starting position. We are birthed, right? We suddenly, from a point of not existing, we exist, right? We come into life, right? So this is the starting point. We all start off as a baby, right? And then from there, the game continues, and at some point, a chess game is going to end. Like, a game doesn't go on forever. I guess technically it can, but based on the nature of the game and also based on the nature of life will end. Game of chess will generally end, right? At some point. So you are at some point in your life, whether you're on move 7, move 20, move 50, whatever, and you have a position. You have a position. Like chess, you have a position. In life, you also have a position. This is your current position, and you need to try. And if you want to be a good life player, just like we try and be good chess players, in chess we try and make the best moves, right? We try and make the best moves in any given position, and same within life. And yeah, the better you can actually evaluate your current position, the better, I think. Well, it's a good start, right? It's a good start to actually make the better, like, life decisions as well. So yeah, who knows, like, what your future will hold, but I think you can, make a better choice. And it's interesting, right? It's really interesting to see how previous moves can impact the present and the future in chess, as well as previous life experience can affect our present and our future. And really, like, it's difficult to do, right? Because everything is in so much context of the past. But just, yeah, take all the past away, look at the present, and try and evaluate and see actually, yeah, what's the next best move, right? I think this is really interesting. This is really interesting. Like, I don't know. Like to me, it makes complete sense. I don't know how much sense that made for you guys. Aha, back to playing chess after taking a 4 month break. Well, this is going to be an interesting video for you to jump straight into. Kane California says, bro, spitting. I appreciate that, Kane. I assume that made some sense, man. Chess is like life because the king dictates the rules, even though the queens do so much more work. Damn. Yeah, I mean, there are so many analogies with life, right? Like, and chess. But yeah, I think this point is really interesting. So to summarize then, I don't even know what's in this video. It says that it's been going 29 minutes, but I literally don't know when it's cut, when it's not cut. So this will be an interesting conclusion. But yeah, to me, in this thinking chapter of this position where basically, I mean, I can flip the screen, right? There's this position where Rowson was deciding queen g7 and queen e6. Rowson's intuition was queen g7. He went for queen e6. Why? Because when he tried to calculate queen g7, he saw a line that was scary in his calculation and decided not to play it because of that. But And his conclusion was that he should just kind of trust his fuzzy thinking and his intuition and just play the move queen d7 and not, put so much weight into that calculation. But for me, I'm saying no, the calculation was the correct way to go. Like, that's the way to prove that your move is right. But you should not go into that calculation with the mindset that, I don't want to take any risks. I don't want the position to complicate. Because as soon as you see something a bit complicated, then you already have this feeling, I don't want to play this move, and you're trying to just get out of it, which is exactly what happened. Like this move rook h1, move 45, and then knight f5. This was basically Rowson's attempt to get out of this line and not have to play into these complications. But had he not had that kind of predisposition and just was like, yo, sure, this position gets complicated, but it's not like is it actually complicated or is it not? And if he found this bishop takes d5, then it's not complicated. It's not complicated, and this is just winning. So this is my conclusion from this game. But yeah, I still like this idea of using intuition to help you find the right candidate moves, but not playing it unless you can justify it through means of calculation. I mean, if there are no alternatives, right, in the position, and you need to make a move, then maybe that's when you can trust your intuition a bit more and just play the move. But if there are good alternatives, let's say you calculate this queen e6, which Rowson played, I guess that's another issue, right? It's like a balance of like, how good does this alternative queen e6 have to be before you can play it, and how bad does it have to be where you're like, okay, actually, I'm gonna trust my intuition, play queen d7, even though I've just calculated a line that it doesn't work, right? Like, it's really tough to make this call. And I guess that balance is probably what makes a good chess player a good chess player. But yeah, this topic is so interesting. So interesting. Yeah. So I think what I can take from this, apart from that interesting life exercise, maybe I'll even do that today, right? Actually, I've got a little notebook. I'll probably just try my best to evaluate my present state and see what the right future should be based on that evaluation. I think I'm going to try that next. But unless I read a bit more Rowson, because I'm also enjoying this book a lot, so maybe we'll just put that on hold. But yeah, it's kind of made me appreciate calculating objectively without some kind of preconceived thoughts or prejudice about the position or where you want the position to go or how you want the position to go, and be really objective when you use this word unclear. Actually, if Sven is watching this, like I played Sven recently in the Journey to Master tournament, and I remember there was a line, this will only apply to Sven because like he was the one analyzing the game with me, but he said this like rook takes h3 move. That was his intuition, he calculated it, but deemed it was unclear. But when you use that word unclear, is it really unclear, or is it unclear based on these preconceived thoughts and notions? Is it unclear because you're like, this looks a little bit complicated, I don't want these complications, therefore I shouldn't play it? Or is it unclear because it literally is objectively an unclear position? And I think if it's not objectively an unclear position, then actually, yeah, the calculation needs to not be stopped at that point. It needs to have a more concrete reason for stopping the calculation and a more clear, objective answer about that calculation. But yeah, that was probably way too deep and unnecessary for a 1 p.m. Stream. But yeah, I think like definitely trying to or attempting to stream this helped, and I'm glad at least some of it got to be saved. I don't know if any of this made any sense. I'm probably just gonna go back and enjoy lounging around. Maybe I'll do a bit of writing, but we'll see. And of course, the biggest news of all is C3 Venom is coming out in 4 days, so definitely stay tuned for that. So yeah, on that note, guys, adios.